It was a dark and stormy night on the open ocean. 5 sailors stood at the starboard railing, shielding their eyes from the rain, trying to catch a glimpse of the possibly human-shaped lump being tossed among the waves below, barely an arm's length away from their vessel.
I say we leave it, Captain. Whoever it was isn't alive anymore. There's no point putting our own lives at risk for the sake of a dead thing.
The first mate was a practical man.
We have a duty, Baracus. If we can identify him, we might be able to answer some questions and put some poor wife's mind to rest.
The captain answered. For the next hour, the men struggled with nets and ropes and poles to bring the sodden lump up over the railing to land on the deck with a thump. What all of them noticed, but none of them said out loud, was that the lump was most definitely not a person. The way it flipped and flopped while they were hauling it in was not the way any human body would flip and flop if it were treated in such a manner. As water pooled around it on the deck, the sailors gathered around in a loose circle. No one wanted to get too close. It looked to be a large rain jacket, such as those commonly worn by most fishermen. There was seaweed and kelp and all sorts of muck stuck to it. But thankfully, there was no body inside of it.
It's just an old rain slicker,
said Baracus.
We're too late to save whoever may have worn it, but God willing, they're just standing out on deck very cold and wet right now, and not at the bottom of the ocean floor, or in a whale's belly. Clean it up, Chappie.
Chappie was the youngest of the sailors, barely 16, and was always given the most unsavory tasks. Chappie looked around at the other men, hoping for one of them to speak up. He didn't want to touch the thing, and he wasn't at all sure that it was just an old, wave-tossed slicker. When no support came from the circle of men, he looked around for something he could use to push it back into the ocean. His eyes landed on a mop that had been left lying on the deck. He picked it up and pushed it at the pile. There was a high-pitched screech, and the jacket moved. It seemed to make a small jump away from the prodding mop. Chappie let out a shriek of his own and dropped the mop. The sailors standing around all took a step back. The jacket wriggled and then made another small scoot away from the direction from which the mop had come.
Someone grabbed the edge of the jacket there and uncover whatever it is,
said one of the sailors.
Do it yourself if you're so keen to see what's under there,
said another. Baracus grumbled.
It's just a damn fish,
and stomped into the circle of sailors, bent down, grabbed the furling mop with one hand and the corner of the slicker with the other. He stepped back, yanking the slicker as he did. Underneath, exposed to the damp night air, was a pale, veiny, gelatinous mound. He looked like a jellyfish, except it was flesh-coloured. It wriggled again and turned, as though it was looking around at its surroundings, although it had no eyes with which to see. Without warning, the thing launched itself into the air towards Chappie. There was another audible splat as it connected with his face. He staggered backwards, clutching at the thing. He was unable to pull it off. Before anyone could come to his aid, it moulded and shaped itself around the entirety of the boy's head and neck. It stretched thin and slightly transparent. The sailors could see Chappie's terrified features through the skin of the creature, his mouth opening and closing wildly, trying to get some air. The sailors, who had been shocked into inaction, jumped forward to try and help the boy. They grabbed at the creature and tried to pull it away from his head, but it was too slippery and stretched for their hands to find purchase. They tried to get their fingers under the edge of it, but it was continuously moving and sliding and wouldn't allow for any gap to be made. The captain pulled out a long knife.
Try and stay still, lad. We'll have this off you in no time.
Hold him still, fellas.
A sailor on either side pinned Chappie's shoulders to the deck. Another sat on his legs, and Baracus held his head. He found it difficult to keep a grip. The creature continued to slip and slide. The captain made a quick, slashing cut across Chappie's forehead, and with his free hand grabbed the bottom flap and dragged it down to clear Chappie's face and allow him to take a gulp of air almost instantly. the creature shifted and reformed to close the cut and cover Chappie's face again.
Try and slide the knife under the edge.
One of the sailors offered.
Hold him still.
The captain commanded. He adjusted his grip on the knife to allow a more delicate control and moved in close. He carefully moved the blade of the knife against the spot where Chappie's skin met the creature's edge. As he gently pushed the knife forwards, the creature made a sudden jerking movement that gripped at the knife and pushed it. The way it pushed the knife caused the blade to turn into Chappie's neck, under his jaw, around behind his ear. The cut crossed the boy's carotid artery, and blood started flowing free and fast. The creature moved to come further down Chappie's neck, past the wound. The creature looked like a bubble over Chappie's head now, and it was getting bigger as it filled with blood. The skin of the creature was transparent, and they could see Chappie as he thrashed inside. A nose or an ear would brush against the taut surface. The captain tried again to slash at the creature, but it had adapted. It thickened its skin where the knife touched it and became such a rubbery consistency that the knife couldn't break through. As Chappie lay twisting and turning, the last of his oxygen was consumed. The sailors tried madly to cut, rip and pull the creature off Chappie any way they could. The boy twitched one last time, and then he was still. His body lay limp on the deck. The creature was making a grotesque balloon around his head, filled with Chappie's own blood. The creature was pulsating slightly. The sailors stood up and stepped back. They looked at each other with horror and hopelessness, not knowing what to do about the dead boy and the conjoined sea creature attached to him.
We should burn it, that thing, and the boy. Burn them both. Destroy it,
said Baracus. The sailors looked at the captain. He nodded.
I'll go get steel tub from galley. We can burn him in that,
said one of the others and walked off in a daze.
I'll go find something for kindling,
said another. The other sailors all muttered their own excuses for walking away and dispersed, leaving the captain alone with the corpse. It didn't take the sailors long to gather what was needed. A large steel tub was lined with wood shavings, broken broom handles, old rags, and any other flammable object near to hand. Baracus indicated to another sailor, and together they picked up Chappie's body and carried it over to the tub. They had to curl up his arms and legs to make him fit. Once he was in there, Baracus poured kerosene over the contents of the tub and dropped a lit match on top. There was a shrieking noise, and the sailors watched as the engorged balloon around Chappie's head snapped back, spilling its bloody contents into the tub and spattering bystanders in a spray of red. The creature slithered and pulsed and reshaped into its original form that the sailors had pulled from the ocean. It leapt out of the tub and made its way overboard before any of the sailors could react. They were still chasing after it when they heard a splash in the ocean below. They reached the railing and looked over to see if they could spot the thing, but there was no sign of it at all. It was gone.
He's gone,
said a sailor. The captain was still standing beside the tub which held Chappie's burning body.
What should we do? We can't leave that thing out there to attack someone else. And how do you propose we catch it?
Asked the captain.
The creature's gone. Leave it be. We can only hope no one else is as unfortunate as we were to pull that thing up on our deck. The deep ocean is full of unknown terrors. We just came face to face with one of them. I suggest you all do your best to forget about it now.
With that proclamation, he put an end to any further discussion amongst the men. They gathered around Chappie's funeral pyre and paid their respects to the boy and waited for the fire to burn down. The next morning, after the ashes had cooled enough, the captain and first mate Baracus tipped what was left in the tub onto a sheet and carefully tied up the remains. As it was lowered into the ocean, the captain said some final words in honour of the boy who had lost his life in his service.
So it's with heavy hearts that we have to commit your body.
Below the surface of the ocean, unseen by any of the sailors, the package began its descent to the ocean floor and its final resting place. The bundle twitched. It made a jerking motion. It moved against the direction of the current, squeezing out from between the folds of the carefully wrapped packet was a small globule. It was a small, gelatinous, flesh-colored lump that could perhaps be mistaken for a jellyfish. The bundle containing Chappie's remains continued its descent to the depths of the ocean, unaware of the terror it had just birthed. The hatchling hovered where it was for a moment, seemingly taking stock of its situation, before it darted away in the direction of the ship that it had just left.